You wanna know something? Sequels. It's commonplace like bread, butter, and the block. Some can make great sequels, some were too ambitious, and others are a lazy cash grab. When it comes down to Lost Legends, the sequel season must cover a follow-up from the last season's entry, and I made that vow long ago. Now it's the time. So let's do a quick recap on the previous season's episode. It all began with a man named Kazunori Yamauchi, an employee for Sony Music's gaming division. This man was hired to pitch out a whole wide range of game ideas for Sony's failed Nintendo CD add-on turned eventual gaming giant known as the PlayStation, one of which is a racing sim. His ideas were rejected by the board and was tasked to make a launch title which later became Motor Toon Grand Prix. After that, in a sequel that made it outside Japan, he soon got the green light to make a racing sim of his dreams that would eventually become Gran Turismo. That's the most abridged bit, but check out the second episode of Lost Legends, links in the description or on the top right corner that just popped up. GT is the racing game that stood out from the rest. I mean, you start with a used car, race, win more cars, and eventually race in a championship with a more powerful race car. Not only that, there's well over 100 cars to choose from, more than the whole car list from Carmageddon with the Splat Pack, or the first 3 Need for Speed games plus High Stakes combined. You may be expecting that this niche racing game wouldn't sold much. Well, it had. Outsold Final Fantasy VII and become the best-selling game on the PlayStation. It never saw a re-release. Now we're up to speed and a sequel was greenlit. So what's next for them? Well, you build on top of the game's foundation, fix some issues, and add new stuff, especially ones that were going to be in the first game. This includes a partnership with the Japanese watch company Seiko, which you'll see their presence throughout most of the series. However, there's a catch. Gran Turismo 2's deadline will be much shorter. So instead of 5 years of planning, GT2 will get around 18 months. Though I bet the whole GT team was expanded upon just like Neversoft at their THPS, but still. The original members still remained, and they're joined in by 30 part-time graphics designers. Not as a luxury thing, but a necessity. The studio is also working more than just GT2. One is a side project that shockingly has nothing to do with racing games. Another is a PS2 tech demo, and a smaller PS2 game is working on the early basis on Gran Turismo 3. They had to make the cars, the tracks, the programming, etc. All this in a tight deadline. They can't just repackage GT1 with new cars and features, so they added some things that would entice players, like rally racing for one. And better yet, why not include a couple real-world tracks to boot, like the Laguna Seca circuit with its iconic corkscrew turn, and testbed for trying out the cars. With the big budget they got, they used it wisely from renting cars, testing them out, record sound from them, etc. A lot of that time is likely spent on the cars themselves, since the count is, well, more. They did reuse assets to save time, and not everything is going to make it in, regardless of licensing or time itself. They did what they can with that kind of time, and probably a good amount of that members slept in the offices like last time. But can they deliver? Well, there's only one way to find out and play the damn thing. Gran Turismo 2 is a much bigger game in terms of content. It takes the foundation of GT1 and adds more, to the point it's separated by 2 discs, one for each game mode. Remember what I said in last season's episode that GT1 only utilized 75% of the PlayStation's hardware capabilities? Well, it came from an interview on the February 1999 issue of Edge magazine, which we'll get back to it on a pre-release chapter, and Yamauchi explains that GT1 wasn't using its full power, so GT2 is the answer to push it to the limit. Our main feature that made the series famous was its car selection. Now with a whopping total of around 700 cars, from more countries than just the 3. New manufacturers appeared from Audi, Citroen, Lancia, Mercury, Mini, Plymouth, and Lister, alongside aftermarket cars like Celine, Spoon, Mugen, Toms, Tommy Kaira, and Roof to name some. Yeah, I'm still trolling the Roof crowd because this is funny. The track selection are double in capacity, including fan favorites like Rome, Midfield, Red Rock Valley Speedway, Apricot Hill, and Laguna Seca. The game introduced rally tracks too, such as Tahiti, Smoky Mountain, Green Forest, and our unicorn track that only appeared once, Pikes Peak. Why haven't they bring that back is beyond me. The soundtrack in the menus is exquisite, composed by Isamu Ohira, this time expanded for all regions. For the in-game music, well, we got Rob Zombie, Stone Temple Pilots, Salt Coffin, and Garbage. The European version had an electronic soundtrack featuring Propellerheads, Ash, Stereophonics, and Fatboy Slim. The Japanese version had Masahiro Ando to do the game's soundtrack again, which allows me to use the music to circumvent YouTube's Content ID detection. You know when Gran Turismo has caused a huge impact, right? That there's a band called The Cardigans, who named their album after it. And guess what the song used in the intro is called? My favorite game. Based. If you want to talk about gameplay, then, well, it's an improvement from the previous. The handling is much better, the races are somewhat competitive, and it does include a turbo gauge for cars that have that turbo, which had this funny sound. That sound never gets old, kids. Oh, and the game doesn't ask you to qualify every race, so you just go right ahead and play. When it comes down to progression, well, it's the same as GT1 but more. You had 10,000 credits to your name, you do all the license tests, which are more, buy a used car, win some races, buy upgrades, win more races, do that Trial Mountain Endurance race with sports tires, win that, get 150k, and then Denso starts Supra as your second car. Pulverize more events, watch the competition, and beat the Red Rock Valley race from the MR Challenge to win yourself a GT40 race car. Beat the races under 496 horsepower with said GT40, and maybe conquer the GT All-Stars Championship because this thing is a beast. The rest of the special events are optional, so you can just go ahead and, well, partake in the GT League where you do the national events, then the Euro Pacific Leagues, and finally, the GT World Championship. Yeah, wild, but that's my way of progression. Winning a race from the majority of the Special League, endurance races, or championships, they grant you a prize car. And I mean every race. Downside is that you can't see the car until you open up the garage. One new type of racing is the rally mode, and to tell you the truth, I haven't played much of it because this is completely optional, apart from a few license tests. Footage here is from the arcade mode. And of course there are some criticisms, notably some of the glaring issues on its rushed development. Ranging from some nasty bugs, like doing some machine tests will wipe out your entire garage, some versions cannot be completed 100%, and more infamously, cars showing up in the wrong races. You know, the GT40 from the historic Car Cup in Rome, and the notorious Vector M12 LM in a Trial Mountain Endurance with cars under 295 horsepower. Yeah, those two are a result of a bug where the devs had to remove a few cars, which caused the game to end up like this. Also, the blatant bias on Japanese cars. Let's not sugarcoat this. Japanese cars had exclusive used car dealerships, and most of the prize cars in this game are Japanese. I mean, there's a total of 96 prize cars in the game. Only 16 are Japanese. Here's another thing to complain about, is that most of the race qualifications only rely on the license and the horsepower. Yeah, it doesn't sound like much, but this doesn't stop me from using my racing GT40 in any race under 493 horsepower, and this thing can take on LMPs. The more stricter races only apply for the drivetrain ones and the one-make races. Now for the expanded track selection, it gets very repetitive when you're racing through the same 5-6 tracks several times, underutilizing not only the GT1 tracks but some of the new ones too. And none of them use the reverse variants apart from randomized races. Have you raced in Rome Night? Likely once outside the license tests, but no more. For those who are wondering about the gameplay playing unusually smooth, this isn't some source ported mod. This is the 1.2 version running on DuckStation, with PGXP enabled, 400% overclock speed, 8MB of RAM, and several specific cheats for widescreen 60 FPS, and force the game to have the opponent cars detailed in the distance. Gran Turismo 2 is the gift that keeps on giving. I highly recommend if you have a thing for racing games. Despite being rushed, it's still a jolly good time. Now, have you ever wondered what GT2 looks like during development? For prototypes, there isn't any. Okay, there's a couple, but these are the close to final builds. If we're talking about the demos, then these are dated a few months away from the final build on November 29th. We got 6 of them, starting with the earliest one from July 29th, to our late Japanese build dated September 21st. However, one thing to assure you that these demos have a running theme. 3 playable cars, 1 lap around Rome Circuit, and a quick look at the simulation mode, which is just browsing the limited menus. Each demo has their own little differences. Our earliest demo came from 3 different demo discs, but either way it's the same build. The official PlayStation Magazine issue 27, PlayStation Underground 3.3, and PlayStation Demo Disc Shock Your System. Differences start with the main menu, reminiscing the previous games. The UI sound effects were reused from GT1 as well. Available cars are the Ford GT, Mitsubishi Lancer Evo 5, and the Fiat Coupe. The Class C cars are only viewable but none are playable. The only playable track is Rome Circuit, labeled as Roma. But there's no grid start, you start immediately. It's only a single lap race, so enjoy that good minute and a half of gameplay. If you're driving either the Lancer or the Fiat, they both lack the turbo gauge just like GT1. The GT/simulation mode is accessible, but only a good chunk of car manufacturers are only viewable. The wheel shop is not made yet, the car wash and machine test icons are red, and the license icon had a typo. When selecting one of the 4 cities, the UI is much different. One part that's intriguing is the used cars feature, which in the final game is exclusive to the Japanese ones. In this demo, it implies that the other regions have their own used car listings. Then again, the used car listings is inaccessible for the demo. Also, the Japanese had exclusive rights to the special model option, again inaccessible. The labels for the tune shops for some manufacturers like Ford and Mitsubishi use their racing brands. One thing to note is that there's no biographies written for any of them. Selecting the car listing is also different because instead of a uniform orange box of the car facing slightly to the right, you get these weird close-ups of the actual photos of cars surrounded by a black box with the titles and no price tag. One cute little detail is the compass icons change depending on which city the manufacturer's in. You cannot access the replay theater in any of these builds, but being idle long enough in the title screen shows off the demo replays of some cars in select tracks, like the Camaro or Cappuccino in Seattle, the Mini 1.3 in Rome, the S2E2 in Route 5, and even the rally tracks. Now, I made a brief mention on the previous episode about a Pizza Hut demo disc. Well, believe it or not, this ain't the only fast food chain that had such privilege, because the House of Ronald McDonald had its own demos. This demo is mostly the same as our OPSM build, but European. However, the arcade mode's car selection had some slight changes. Only a few cars had different color options, some from the previous build are omitted, and some slight changes to the sound design. The next one, it's a slightly later build from the previous, but this time with different UI sound effects. There's an option to load Garage, but that's inaccessible. The notable differences between the previous ones are 1. The inclusion of the turbo gauge. And 2. The replays, which contain the Mazda RX-7 in Laguna Seca, the Peugeot 206 in Route 5, and the Pennzoil Nissan Skyline in Super Speedway. Another difference is the car selection is updated. Hey look, I'm trying my best here, there ain't much difference between all of them demos. Next demo comes from the official soundtrack CD known as Gran Turismo 2, Music at the Speed of Sound. This is a 2-disc set containing both the album and a demo disc. By the way, the album did contain music from GT2 plus some extra tracks because, well, the in-game OST is short. And oddly, no Stone Temple Pilots, but instead, filters. Hey mate, nice shot. The album is released somewhere in early 2000, but the demo itself seems to be dated much earlier than that. Could be dated sometime either before or shortly after the Pizza Hut demo. You may notice that the gameplay looked a lot more chunky, but that's because I'm playing this off the web via the Internet Archive. Wanna know a sin? This control scheme! Now back in my day I used ZXCV as my face button controls, arrows for the D-pad, enter and right shift as my start and select buttons, and lastly QWAS as my shoulder buttons. Until I bought a Logitech F310 that changed everything for me. Anyways, demo doesn't seem to change much between it and the Pizza Hut one. What this disc has was more content outside the playable demo. A commercial, the behind the scenes will cover next chapter, and showcasing GT2000. Alright, you got the same main menu, UI, same car, same track, blah 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 blah. This version had a different set of sound effects. Only notable difference in gameplay is that it shows the best lap and course record, but that's useless because this is a one-lap race. Also note that this tachometer numbers lack the black outlines. Replays include the S2000 in midfield, the Lancer Rally Car at Tahiti Maze, also known as the Safari Course, the Toyota Vitz F in SSR5, Peugeot 206 at Seattle, and the impressive rally car at Smoky Mountain North. Now the last demo for today, which is a standalone. They changed the sound effects to match their final game counterparts, except the sound you want to go back, which is in a higher pitch. The notable difference is that finding this demo is a little harder to get, but I eventually got it. Yeah, I may have glossed over the opponent cars, which are different in each demo. This, at least in particular, looked bugged when I saw the wheels protruding in and out of its body, shifting itself away from the wheel wells. Thankfully, that was fixed in the final. Now, despite these demos being the same-ish, these individual ones in question held secrets you won't believe in the cut content chapter. But before we get to that, we should talk about what the game is like prior to these demo phases. This next chapter is going to get a little wild. We got stuff from magazines, off the web, and even some early footage. The first segment is where we go back to Edge magazine. This double-page spread shows off a car that was completely cut, the Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR. Note the minimal livery on that thing, but there's more. We have screens of the Lancers in an early version of Tahiti, a Mini Cooper in an early version of either Apricot Hill or Midfield, and some more screens of that CLK GTR, complete with D2 Privyat livery. Note that these two screenshots had different colored mirrors. One detail is on the grille where it's likely using the original sponsor, Warsteiner, a beer company. Second set comes from a magazine called PlayStation Power, and we have a ton of early screenshots. We got screens of Tahiti with the Peugeot 105, and screenshots of a very early version of Seattle. Next is IGN, where we got screenshots from not only Edge magazine, but more original ones. The first screenshot looks like it takes place in the earliest phase, showing off the Honda S2000 in an early version in Red Rock Valley. I said earliest phase because the HUD is reused from GT1. The finish title in race time was located at the bottom center. The next two also took place in the same build, but in Seattle and Pikes Peak. Lastly, these two screens in particular shows off the Mustang in yellow, and two things to note. The Viper in Grand Valley used the 96 model, and the early version of Rome Short which took place in the evening. Now let us return to the Atlantis of old video game content, videogames.com. We have two screenshots of the CLK GTR in better resolution, two screens of the Evo 5 rally car in Tahiti, an Impreza in a night version of Tahiti. Can't tell if this is an early Dirt Route 3 or Tahiti Road. And one little surprise, a Datsun 240Z in Special Stage Route 11. That track was cut in the final game. Our next segment is from the official GT2 press disc. Sadly, no early screenshots of the CLK, but a ton of .tiff files, which are whack. No, seriously, here's the converted PNG of the S2000, and this is the full TIFF next to it. I got a bunch of these absurdly high resolution renders that meant for gaming mags, including the Lancer for that Edge magazine I mentioned for the third time. Complete in 2560 by 3200 pixels. Yeah, absurd. Got more screenshots of GT2, most of them weren't interesting, apart from the few showing off a visual bug where the wheels are behind the car bodies for some strange reason. We got some more screenshots of the license tracks, including an early version of the Circle one. Got a couple screens of some muscle cars when they brake, they're nose down, ass up. Finally, the Corolla rally car in an early version of Pikes Peak. Take note of that Borg lap count since this is the only point-to-point track. For the car renders like the previous press discs, we have plenty, but I want to know what was changed from it in the final. The Citroen Saxo rally car was called a Saxo F2 kit car, since this is a racing modification. The Roof Turbo R originally had the turbo badge on the back, but due to possible legal reasons this was replaced by the standard roof logo. The TBR Speed 12 in the final sports a metallic purple color, but originally is going to either sport a dark blue, gold, or silver. Lastly, the Vauxhall Tigra had the Opal badge. If car renders ain't enough, how about track wireframes and maps? For the basic maps, these are the better quality ones shown in the GT2 arcade mode. We do have all 29 tracks, including the reverse variants. There's nothing interesting in these maps, except the file names, which I'll show off on screen, and let your autism run wild what these file names meant or implied. These all could be just early internal names for those tracks. The wireframes are fascinating, showing how it's done. There isn't much, but for some of the new tracks, they share some early beta names. For example, Pikes Peak Hill Climb is going to have the road at the end. Rome Night was Rome Night Drive. Tahiti Maze was Tahiti Dirt Route 2, and lastly, Apricot Hill was once called Plum Strip. Another tidbit on track names comes from a Czech PlayStation magazine listed in tracks. Tahiti Road once had the circuit part of its name. Grindelwald was Eiger Path, Apricot Hill was Palm Strip, and Pikes Peak had the name of North American Roadway. Now time for some of that footage. In the behind the scenes interview from the album demo, there are some glimpses of the earliest build of GT2. The HUD is simplified and the numbered text aren't aligned, so they're all set too high. It has the GT2 logo at the bottom left, and the tachometer remained black instead of the translucent white. The first clip is in Rome, likely the Swan's Head part of the track, missing some parts of the scenery. Second clip takes place in an early version of Seattle, with the first hairpin turn lacking the grandstands and fences. The turn signs are different, lighting's different, and some building textures look different compared to the final. Next clip takes place in a later build, showing off Tahiti Dirt Route 3, which lacked any fences or turn signs. Another is in Laguna Seca. There's a sequential cutaway clips of the real-life one in GT2, lacking the logo, mind you. This clip of the Lancer taking the last 3 turns doesn't look different, but I assume the trucks in the background had a different look, who knows. This clip here with the Firestone tire lacked the trucks and the scenery, and the hill is less steeper. Next clip comes from a Hong Kong gaming magazine known as Game Plus, and this is the E3 issue. Evan Hanley, the show's co-producer, showed me this when I was covering THPS, and looking inside shows off clips of cancelled games, like Castlevania Resurrection for the Dreamcast, Wild Waters for Nintendo 64, and Konami Racing. This bit showing off GT2 is gameplay of the beta high-speed ring, reusing GT1's HUD. In case you're wondering, yes, we do have footage with GT2000, but in Special Stage Route 5. We have more E3 clips of the game, archived by GT Fanatic and another Lost Media enjoyer, Matt J155. The first clip shows off the demo exclusive menu screen with 2 options, single race and time attack, along with montage of gameplay. There's a split-second shot of the Skyline R34 racing in Route 11. There's also another split-second shot of the early title screen. After that, there's some raw gameplay footage of the Lancer rally car in the beta version of Tahiti Dirt Route 3. Second clip used some sort of capture card, showing off the Toyota Altezza in an early version of Seattle. Last clip is the R34 in Route 11 again. Second clip is a very short clip of the S2000 and Viper RT10 in Red Rock Valley. Yeah, I got nothing. The last clip comes from the Japanese exclusive demo disc known as Toro Channel, named after this goofy looking cat who was in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. This 3-minute preview shows off a later build of the game. The notable bit here are the early menu screens for the tune shops, a different version of the car brand menus, the license screens, wheel shop, and this screen where they mention a ton of brand names. Now before that screen, I noticed Rover being mentioned, but from what I recall, this might be part of Mini and MG. Another is a typo for Mercury as Marcury. Guess that's it for the pre-release stuff. The next chapter is also lengthy. Now, it's time for the cut content corner. Like I said, GT2 was rushed, and that means corners had to be cut. A lot of them. Check the time bar and see why. Thanks to the power of fan-made tools that allows me to actually go through the contents that aren't meant to be accessed by WinRAR, I have the tools that allows me to extract the contents in the game's .vol files, and a car viewer to look at the vehicles more closely. Sadly, there's still no tool to view the game's tracks, though that would be very nice for track conversions. Unused graphics. Let's begin with the graphics because that's the shortest bit. I got a handful of these weirdly shaped mini-maps. These are actually the ones used for the license tests. They weren't used because normally the tests disable the mini-maps in general. Even if they re-enabled it, a lot of these end up being unused and replaced with Autumn Ring's minimap as a failsafe. Another thing are the early skyboxes. There's a whole list of them. We got one for Grindelwald, the unused indie track, we'll get to it later, a Dusk version meant for Rome Short, Rome Night, 4 versions of Seattle, a Dawn skybox for High Speed Ring using the early test ride demo build for Gran Turismo 1, and one for Red Rock Valley. These have IDs, meaning it could be modded. If, let's say, I changed the Rome Circuit skybox with SSR5s, it could possibly be done. Another thing are 2 unused icons, a Super License icon that used the IA license as a placeholder, and a Platinum Trophy for the license tests, thankfully unused. The only known reward from the Super License, apart from a prize car, is the event synthesizer. Next are a bunch of early menu screens. And when I mean early, I meant solid black background, minimal flare UI menu screens. There are 2 versions, which are NTSC and PAL. The first one is the event menu, showing 3 options instead of 4, omitting the endurance races. Note the massive gap between the event icons and the Japanese text roughly translates to, "The road to the World Championship starts here." The early rally events had 9 events, all using their final track names. They have no big icon or any license icons. Next is the GT Nationals, that does have the license requirements but no national flags. The 2 out of 3 races text isn't necessary. The Euro-Pacific League menus lack the world map in the background, no nation flags, and the only thing that's unique is the entry passport, which implies that you need that once you clean out the GT National events to get there. Then the GT World League had 2 screens. One has another entry passport requirement, and the other is the GTWC entry screen itself. And originally, this championship was going to have 7 races in a standard format. In the final, it's a series championship race where you do 5 of them in sequence. Next for the PAL menu screens, and these are much earlier. Here's a now printing screen. Don't know what this is used for, unfortunately. The most ancient of menu screens, which is just the main menu for the simulation mode. Nothing but text and no map graphics, no GT2 logo or the credits at the bottom. There's also an early Super License test screen, comparing to the final which had a different lineup. This one used the early names of Tahiti Maze, Rome Circuit, and a different spelling for midfield. Then the lineup shows that Tahiti Daru 3, Red Rock Valley, Deep Forest, Trial Mountain, and Grand Valley were going to be in there, but replaced by Smoky Mountain North, Grindelwald, Rome Night, Tahiti Road, and Apricot Hill. For the event menus, we have an earlier one with the GT League having a different icon, and translated text. For the rally events, we had 4 tracks with some German text. There's Tour de Tahiti, Passage to Colorado, Green Forest Dirt Trail, and Smoky Mountain. The Colorado one had 5 events, implying they're using both the hill climb and downhill versions as one event. Just guessing. For the GT League, we even have a more minimal look, but this is possibly due to the following screen, which is this German Nationals event in particular. There are 3 class races, guessing that the events will be tougher, accompanied by the license needed. Now here's a cut element, a stricter entry requirement. To enter the GT German Championship, you needed a German car, or a Ford for some reason. The quote eligible cars could possibly be a button that shows a list of usable cars required. Here's a different version of the GT Nationals menu, making an abstract version of the countries represented. Note that this is in German again. Next is the Euro-Pacific League screen, this time with an IB license requirement, and they even got the regions in their cute little boxes. But the coloring makes it hard to read the text, mainly the yellow. Next are 3 event screens which is similar to the German Nationals. One had all yellow, one had all blue, and the last one had all 3 colors. All of them lacked a license icon, lacked any additional texts, and use courses 1, 2, and 3 as placeholders for whatever track they plan on using. The only one that's distinct is the GT All-Stars, with the requirement that you need a race car to enter. There's also the GTWC, but in German again. No fancy graphics, just a 5-event championship. Lastly, the special events category. The first one is an early lineup that shows 12 events in one screen. The Clubman Cup icon was green instead of orange. The drivetrain races use a different icon, and the remaining 4 are blank. The second lineup used a different look, but the colors here looked crushed and unnatural, especially the ones with the IA license that turned the red into a brownish color. Anyways, they used the outlines of cars to represent the events. The luxury 4-door used a Mercedes. The World Open sports car used a Honda Beat. The global compact car used a hatchback. Muscle car used anything but a muscle car. Gran Turismo used an Aston Martin, and the lightweights used a Daihatsu or Suzuki Alto Works. The 2 events don't even have a car. Unused cars. For cars, despite the ridiculously high number in the game, there's plenty of them that got the chop, some for good reason. To start off the list, the Lancer Evo 5 rally car, complete with Wininium livery. This is a replica that Kazunori owned, which is based off Tommy Makinen's Winfield Lancer used in the 1998 Australia Rally. This was possibly replaced by another Evo 5 rally car which had the same performance, but with the Rally Art livery. Another reason is that Winfield is a tobacco company, hence the logo shown was censored. You ever wonder why there's no Martini or Marlboro logos on those rally cars? Well, it's simple. Advertising drugs and alcohol to children is a taboo subject, even if your game is E-rated. Hey, wait a minute, didn't Sega Rally had a Lancia with the Martini logo intact? Twice? The Mercedes CLK race car, also known as the CLK DTM 2000, and this one is almost complete, with the motto, logo, performance, and even a few name strings used in replays. The curious reason why it lacks any livery is because this is a concept car for the 2000 season of the German DTM series. Want to make this even funnier is that this is one of the only 3 special class Mercedes models that were cut. Next, the C-Class touring car. This is meant to be the 1995 DTM model, which was meant to go alongside the Calibra and the Alpha 155 touring cars. There's no model, but it's likely going to use the D2 Privyat livery. Only some text strings in the test drive demo along with the logo exists. A curious thing to note is that in the final game, the Mercedes brand doesn't have a special model in the dealership. Curiously, this and the DTM models were the ones that were cut in the game. Another thing is that there's only one Mercedes model that can be racing modified, which is the SLR. Eventually, we'll get these Mercedes racing models in later GT games, such as the 2000 CLK DTM and GT3, and the aforementioned CLK GTR and GT4. The Mugen S2000. This is a tuned S2000 by Mugen, which only had the car and logo. The rest is unfinished. Now, even though the Spoon variant was used in GT2, the Mugen version will make its debut in GT3. Next are 2 Integras, the GS and LS, complete with racing mods. Both models and textures exist, but like the Mugen S2000, rest of the data are unfinished and will make an appearance in later games. The Ford GT40 Mark III. The name exists in the game's data, but the car shown is the Mark I with a grey trunk. It made sense as the actual Mark III looks similar to the Mark I, albeit with different larger headlights and curvier appearance to comply with the federal safety regulations back then. There is no racing version of the Mark III, by the way. In the demo version of GT2, there's a lot more cars which never made or eventually made an appearance in later titles. They all exist in name only. Here's the list. Here's a set of cars that are more interesting. Starting with the Renault Sport Spider. Now, even though the French manufacturer made his debut in GT2, the lovingly weird Sport Spider never made such an appearance. Not even the 7th entry. Wait, let me correct that. They made a cameo in the alt credits in GT3. You know, the one where it plays Lenny Kravitz's See You Again. It did appear in other racing games like Roadsters, but only Apex/Racing Evolution used the racing models. Next is the Pagani Zonda C12 and C12S. The Zondas first appeared in the 3rd entry, but they're going to be planning the 2nd. Guessing they had no time to introduce them. Okay, well, get this. 4 car makers that was planned but never appeared until far later. Lamborghini, Ferrari, McLaren, and especially Porsche was planned to be in GT2 as their racing variants of the 911, Lambo Diablo, the McLaren F1, and the Ferrari F355 GT. The Nomad Diablo made its first appearance in the Japanese version of GT3 because of some licensing loopholes. The McLaren in GT4 is part of BMW because of the same reason. But the brands themselves, along with Ferrari, will make an official appearance in Gran Turismo on the PSP. Porsche, on the other hand, is another story. So, ever wonder why we have obscure companies like Roof, Venturi, and even Vector? Well, Roof cars are literally Porsches in body only. Venturi claims to be the French Ferrari, and Vector, well, Vector has a nice looking car. Also, not to mention EA's exclusive licensing rights to Porsche in general. We'll eventually get Porsches in GT Sport, and that's a while after EA's license expired. One little tidbit are 2-cut racing modifications for both Plymouth and Roof. I don't know what the racing roofs could have looked like since they were an obscure brand, but the Plymouth one I could guess they were going to use some old school NASCAR designs, especially in that Superbird. And I bet they're going to base the racing design off of that Dinoco King himself, Richard Petty's number 43 in that sky blue. I know it. Alas, that never happened. Apart from that Ford Taurus Mark Martin design, which later got changed to a more generic one in later versions. That's all for cars. There are more, but it went on longer than it should. Okay, I literally forgot about this, but GT2 also had its own set of non-car models that are oddly playable. Like GT1, these are meant for the results screen for the end of the licenses and championship races. The common license plate and big trophy are used, while the smaller trophy, license award models, and this gigantic smiley face are unused. The most bizarre one is the literal loading background for the arcade mode. Yeah, that thing is a playable car for some reason. Unused tracks. Moving on with the demo versions, we have plenty of cut courses, alongside early versions of the final games tracks. Alongside that, there's a cheat code that lets me to access the low garage menu, which grants me access to the entire car list, to an extent. An odd thing here is that after selecting the car, I have to select a track, and these are referred to their internal names. There's 51 in total, but for the sake of time, look at the time bar, I'm gonna go over the ones that were cut, and some of the more interesting beta tracks. Oh, and in case you're wondering, yeah, there's no special stage Route 11 in the demo files. So let's begin. Dart Test 2 is our first piece, which is one of the game's many test levels. The lack of scenery from those test tracks are normal here. I believe this could be passed off as an early version of Motorsports Land due to how short, flat, and compact it is. There are 3 dirt test tracks. The first one is the most stable, with the tire walls and some breaks and jumps. Only drawback from Dirt Test 1 is the invisible wall at the end. Dirt Test 2 starts off with you facing the wall. This course is a whole festival of ghostly walls. You get smacked by them every few seconds. Well, until I just found out if you stick to the right side of the road then it's absolutely fine. Except that one spot there's an invisible wall. This track is also lengthy, just over 3 minutes to make the lap. And the only thing I like is that ski jump part at the end. Dirt Test 3, sadly I can't play properly. I mean, it can load just fine, but it spawns you outside of the track. The layout is unique as this is a super special stage or a stadium rally track, where two cars start at different positions, and when you're done with one loop, you're halfway through a lap. You know, like a movie strip. You may be asking that if I can just simply roll myself back into the track willy-nilly, but here's the problem on that. If I enter the track from the outside, the physics starts having a seizure and my car ascends to the heavens and then the game crashed. Next is Highway 2000, and this is one of the only two tracks to bear the 2000 moniker. The other being Seattle, which I'll get to later. This is Special Stage Route 5 with the skybox from Tahiti and glitchy road textures. Indy is a rounded rectangle track taking place at a nighttime city setting. The name and layout is based off the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, as you can tell. There's a lot of detail apart from the infield, which had nothing but a few sparse buildings. I'm guessing they replaced this one with the Motegi-based Super Speedway in the final. Monte Carlo, the Monaco Street Circuit, or Côte d'Azur as planned to be in GT2. This would have been the third licensed track, but as you can see, it didn't go far in development. Only the roads, some billboards, and the tunnel was modeled. Also, plenty of invisible walls on the main straight. Now before our next track, I accidentally went to Grand Valley East, but this version made my Suzuki Alto Works look glitchy. Now fair warning, this track is an affront to your eyes, but not as bad as the Problem Solvers. Seattle 2000 is purely unplayable. The track is so unstable that the game crashed before reaching the starting line. Hell, if you attempt to look back, the game crashed. It's so glitchy that the sound doesn't play properly, and your car won't render just how bad it is. The following entries are all Tahiti or Tahiti themed. The first one is called Tahiti D, or Tahiti D's Nuts, which is an early version of Dirt Route 3. The scenery is noticeably different, with less fences, less jumps, more telephone poles, and a different elevation altogether. We also have the other Dirt Route 3 for comparison, but ignore the glitchy signs. Tahiti Road shouldn't be on here, but this track had some notable changes between it and the final one. For one, there's no pit lane. We got some rough looking road halfway through the track, different looking trees, etc. Tahiti Test Short may look like some basic test track, but I found out this is a thematically swapped Smoky Mountains South. Tahiti Test 6 is an early version of Tahiti Maze. Again, the scenery is different, there's more people among the first section of track, no checkpoints, and at the latter half, there's a massive building blocking the view. Tahiti Maze, if I refer to this guide, is not Tahiti Maze, but a different test track. A short one too. The next one is called Test. This is nothing special except you start outside the track again. And unlike the rally one, this is just a generic short test course. Test 2 is funny because this is probably the other test track, but the race ends immediately. The rest of the list are license test related and the results are the same. Start out of bounds. Now in the final, there's only a few reverse tracks that are unused. Smoky Mountain South is the most complete, while Super Speedway, Test Course, and even Laguna Seca are barely started. Then again, I don't know why I want to play the right-handed version of the oval tracks, and Laguna isn't designed to drive backwards. Unused game modes. On the arcade mode disc, there's a planned professional difficulty that was cut. It appeared in GT3 as a hidden difficulty with a button combination. Okay, so ever wonder why we have a few drag cars in GT2? Well, there's also a bug I forgot to mention in the version 1.0 retail release where it prevents players from reaching 100% completion. Yes, it's drag racing. This mode has never seen the light of day, until I found out it was finally introduced in Gran Turismo 7. So how far did its simple drag race mode got done during development? Only those from Polyphony knows about that. But what I can tell you is that it's gone far to the point it was mentioned in the manuals. Guessing this is a late cut due to time constraints. This leads to the next question. What will be the drag track? Now, some fans say that a track called Palm Strip is the one, but that was shut down because that's an early name from Apricot Hill. The test course is a decent candidate since this is a straight line course with 1000 meter strips. Maybe it could be its own course like the many test tracks, but I'm just grasping at straws here. In the end, it could be just any straight line and would be a worthy addition. Unused sounds and miscellaneous. Now that's it for the tracks and game modes. Let's move on to sound, which is very brief. This game had 2 unused jingles for both the start and finish. I'm betting top dollar these are meant for the license tests. My guess these weren't included was A, the nature of how the license test started if it's not a launched one, or B, time constraints. Chances are it's likely the latter. Okay, this one is a late edition. So when I was digging through the manual that references drag racing, I was at the music credits. Almost all the songs do indeed play, like the Cardigans for the intro, Beck's Where It's At in the simulation credits, Foo Fighters' My Hero in the arcade credits, and the in-game ones I've mentioned. Now these two here, Filter's Hey Man, Nice Shot, and Gear Whore's Accelerator weren't used or even exist in the game's files, yet credited. Well, guess what? Gear Whore's music was used in the album demo's main menu, and what I said in the builds chapter, Filter is also used in the actual album. Coincidentally, Accelerator was used as part of the soundtrack for Apocalypse by Neversoft. Man, I swear that these Lost Legends episodes seem to connect with each other one way or another. Now lastly for code, there are some GT Hi-Fi leftovers, and guess what? I've been using this during the whole playthrough GT2 via GameShark. What's not been used are these 3 widgets meant for the game stats menu. 2 related to the machine tests, and 1 showing the car in the garage for the highest power output. Yeah, that's quite the length we got there. I think it's about time to wrap things up. Gran Turismo 2. A great sequel, but sadly rushed to meet the holiday deadline. If it was a January or February 2000 release, it would have been a masterpiece. But like I said, it sold pretty damn well, being in 3rd place of the best-selling game on the PlayStation. However, there are some groups of mad lads who went out of their way to not only breathe new life to this game, but managed to include some new and obscure vehicles, but also new events. It's known as Project A-Spec. A-Spec includes bug fixes, new events, more colors for certain cars, and a few new tunes if you're sick of Super Bonbon on loop. Oh, and they also fixed some car performances and AI opponents appear in the right races. For cars, A-Spec included the European exclusive ones that didn't make the cut like the beloved Renault Sport Spider, the SLK McLaren, and the forbidden STP Porsche, along with new additions like the Nismo 400R prototype, obscure JGTC cars, the Mazda 767B, the Renault Alpine A442, the modern Mini Cooper prototype, and even the Plymouth Prowler to name some. But not my model though. Perhaps in Season 3 I'll cover the game that defined next gen, which is Gran Turismo 3, and the cut contents run deep. Anyways, that's all for today, and tune in next time where I decide to cover a game from the 6th gen console I never played as a kid, which got cancelled indirectly from a tragedy. my Irish friend is going to start questioning me what game and when I'm releasing that episode. After that, it's part 2 of the whole Shantae update crusade. And that's all for today, and I'll see you later. Bye.